Mr. Scraggly, spindly and tall. Mr. Scraggly walks the halls. If Mr. Scraggly was found to like you, then Mr. Scraggly would surely find you. Or at least, that's how the story goes. The story of Mr. Scraggly has been told to every kid in my town for who knows how long as one of those scary stories that old-timers tell their children to keep them from running off and making fools of themselves. Basically, it's our town's version of the boogeyman. There's an old abandoned boarding school, the Jackson School, that is just outside of town, and supposedly, it has someone roaming the halls at night hunting any kids dumb enough to trespass. That someone is dubbed Mr. Scraggly. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, it's not as straightforward as it should be. No one can keep their story straight on who or what Mr. Scraggly actually is. Some say he came from an old rundown circus. Some say he's a serial killer that escaped from a nearby psych ward. Some say he's an old Indian curse placed upon the school. And some say he's a town folk's mutated baby that they left in the woods. From lizard people to aliens, the stories always seem to get more wild with every generation. Sometimes Mr. Scraggly is a man. Sometimes he's a spider-like creature. The stories even differ on what happens when he gets to you. The only true consistencies are that Mr. Scraggly has long limbs, walks through the halls of the Jackson School, will try to find you if you enter said school, and as the name suggests, he looks quite scraggly, whatever that means. In spite of the legend, over the years, it has become a bit of a tradition for the students of my old high school to break into the old Jackson School where Mr. Scraggly is said to roam. Everyone had to do it at least once just to mess around and say that they did it. Sex, drugs, vandalism, trespassing, acting like idiots. Everything that stupid teens do, myself included, without parental supervision. All that is to say that everyone has their own story of Mr. Scraggly. And now that you're all caught up, this one's mine. It was late in the hot Oklahoma spring, and the night before senior skip day. My friends all thought it would be a perfect night to explore the Jackson boarding school because we figured the local cops would be more prepared the next day. That is, if they would even care at all. The logic wasn't wrong. I wish it was, but it wasn't. No police at all. It was just my friends and I that night. Claire, Daniel, and I met with our two other friends, Jeremy and Emma, outside the school in a fit of boredom. Jeremy was, well, let's face it, a bit of a douche. Not in a bad way. He was one of my closest friends for years, and despite his douchiness, we as a group all loved the guy, along with everyone else that knew him. Basically, he was the stereotypical popular kid with an annoyingly high amount of charisma that made it hard not to love him. On the opposite end of the spectrum was Daniel, who was, how do I put this politely? A little basic, boring, a stick in the mud. Not to any fault of his own, but to the fault of his parents being the most helicoptery parents to have ever helicoptered. I'm sure you get the picture because we all know that type of overbearing family. Still, Daniel was great in his own way, and had the added benefit of having a car. He also gave in to peer pressure easily enough that we could get him to join in on our wild adventures. In this case, casual trespassing. Claire was never really close to any of us except Daniel, but she still liked to hang around with our group. She mostly just stood to the side watching and laughing without adding much until she decided to hit us with a snarky remark. But still, she fit in well. We liked having her. And last but not least, there was Jeremiah's sister, Emma. I'm sure you'll see how I felt about her as the story goes on, but just like most high school crushes go, it didn't pan out. In short though, she was my world. The five of us all managed to sneak out under the guise of fake concert plans. I'm sure my parents knew I was lying, but they didn't mention anything before Daniel picked me up. Claire and I were in Daniel's car as he took us to the road outside the Jackson School. "Here we are, guys. Who are we betting is first to get caught by Mr. Scraggly? Daniel said jokingly while looking at Claire and I. I stepped out of Daniel's car and onto the road where I took a deep breath of muggy late night air. The school was just a short walk away, standing behind a tall chain link fence. It was a large 3-story brick and wood building with weathered white paint. Upon seeing it, it obviously wasn't designed to look comfortable. Even on the first floor, the windows were slightly raised in a way that was more suited for a prison than a school. While I was taking in the surroundings, I answered Daniel's question. Honestly, probably you, I said, giving him a teasing look that said, I'm sorry. Claire got out of Daniel's car and stretched her arms up in the air while she answered. Yeah, I think he's right. You're the one with the car keys after all. Claire gave a playful smile to Daniel, which caused Daniel to smile with his hand raised and a finger pointed as he was ready to retort. But he didn't get a chance before we heard a familiar voice coming from the side of the road in front of us. It's about time you guys got here, Jeremiah called out. Claire, Daniel, and I looked over to see Jeremiah and Emma walking in our direction. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we could have walked the whole building 3 times before you guys got here, Emma said in a teasing manner. I crossed my arms and tilted my head at her. Uh-huh, you guys just got here, didn't you? I said smugly. She placed her hands on her hips and smirked. Actually, we got here 4 minutes ago. Thank you very much. I scoffed. Oh, you poor thing, I said. I'm sorry to keep you both waiting, my lady. Will you ever find it in your heart to forgive me? As Emma and Jeremiah stopped next to us, Emma said, I'll forgive you. Just this once, of course. Now I was the one smirking. After having lost myself in Emma's eyes, I pulled myself together and looked around at the rest of the group. Is everyone ready? Oh yeah, said Jeremiah. He turned on an annoyingly bright flashlight in Daniel's eyes. I was practically born ready. Do you not know who you're talking to? No, we know, said Daniel. He squinted and covered his eyes. Just trying to forget that you exist. And weren't you born premature? Jeremiah laughed. Ha! I was just eager. Jeremiah walked up to Daniel, laughing, before patting him on the shoulder and handing him a flashlight. Glad they drug you along, bud. Daniel grabbed the light from Jeremiah. That makes one of us, because I still don't know if I am. It'll be fine, Emma said to Daniel. She looked at me before handing me a flashlight. Are you ready? I flicked on the flashlight and pointed the light menacingly beneath my chin. Let's go find Mr. Scraggly. Who's going first? Asked Jeremiah while looking around at the group. He was holding up an out-of-place corner on the bottom edge of the tall wire fence to create an opening. Is there not another way in? Daniel asked Jeremiah. Preferably one that doesn't involve me crawling on the cold dirt? I chimed in. Well, unless you have a pair of bolt cutters on you, you can always climb the fence. Ooh, I guess it's been decided who's going first. Over or under, Danny boy? Emma asked as she smacked him on the butt. Daniel looked up and down the fence before letting out an audibly breathy sigh. Fine, under it is. Daniel lowered himself to the ground and started to mumble something under his breath while he belly crawled under the raised area of the fence. Attaboy, Daniel, Jeremy shouted, clearly pleased with himself. Claire, you up? She covered her head with the hood of her sweater, so as to not let it or her hair get caught on the fence. You better not let that drop on me, Jeremiah. Ye of little faith, I wouldn't dream of it. Jeremiah gave a wink in the direction of Emma and I. The temptation he felt to let the fence drop on Claire simply because of her comment was nerve-wrackingly obvious. But he stayed his hand. Emma? Jeremiah asked, cueing his sister up next. Don't mind if I do. Emma patted me on the shoulder. Enjoy the show. She got on her stomach and crawled through. Then there were two. Jeremiah rose to his feet and stood by me before talking to the group in his usual teasing voice. See you guys later. We're gonna grab something to eat. Emma piped up. Be sure to get me an extra order of Get Your Sorry Butts over here before I come back and kick them. Do you think that comes with fries? Claire playfully asked Daniel. I walked to the fence to pull it up for Jeremiah to crawl under. I guess they're not hungry. Jeremiah dove on his stomach to crawl through the fence. That's good, because I am hungry for adventure. Jeremiah's statement was followed by 3 boos from the other side of the fence before he made it across. Once he reached the other side, he relieved me of my duty and grabbed the fence once again. Your turn. Don't get stuck. You made it under, so I think I'll manage, I said before I lowered myself to the ground. It was chilled under the night sky and the grass slightly damp. I crawled my way through the opening while feeling the wire brush my shoulders as I moved. When I stood back up to pat the dirt and grass off my clothes, I saw a figure briefly move past one of the windows of the school. Did you guys see that? I said, pointing up to where I saw it. Oh yeah, that's just Mr. Scraggly, Jeremiah said. He pointed to show that nothing was there. Oh great, he's already scared, said Emma, putting her hand on my shoulder. Don't worry, little one, I'll protect you. That is a shock. I thought Daniel would be the first one to get scared, said Claire. I too thought Daniel would be the first to get scared, said Daniel, noticeably trembling as he looked at the school. I forced out a laugh. Okay, fine. I bet it was just an animal anyway. I looked at the high windows and the boarded doors. So, how exactly do we plan to get in? Jeremiah stepped forward and turned to face the whole group with a smile on his face. That's the fun part. The basement? Claire asked. We were all standing in a line looking at the old battered door at the side of the school building. You want us to go into the basement? Emma pointed to the broken window about 10 feet above us. Over or under, Claire? Emma said. Well, whichever we decide, I'm not going first this time, Daniel said, visibly trembling. I won't lie. I had to take a good breath to ease my nerves before I said, I went last when we crawled under the fence. Looks like this time I'm up first. None of the group stopped me as I stepped forward. I turned on my flashlight and raised the basement door. Bravo 6, going dark. Good luck, soldier, said Emma. I glanced in her direction to see her saluting me as I took my first steps into the basement. The group all filed in behind me while we entered the cramped enclosure. The basement air was dusty and stale to the point that my nose got dry. Damaged old desks were scattered across the floor, as well as splintered old bookcases and metal furnaces. And as I pointed my flashlight around, I could make out the glistening of spider webs throughout the old furniture in the brick-laden room. I broke the silence. Well, if this place isn't haunted, I don't know what place is. Yeah, said Emma in a really drawn-out tone. It definitely fits the vibe. I hate to be a buzzkill, said Daniel, but we're more likely to find tetanus than a ghost or Mr. Scraggly in this mess. A dead rat also seems likely, said Jeremiah, pointing his light around the room until he found a beaten old staircase. There, Jeremiah said, pointing before leading the way. As we walked up the steps, every bit of wood creaked under our weight, and every step felt like we were moving through a funhouse. The warping of the old wood which caused the boards beneath us to be smooth at weird places and tilted or angled in others. We soon reached the top step to find a door that opened with ease. Based on the broken lock, it was probably from the damage done by other urban explorers like us trying to get into the school over the years. I slowly crept the door open and peeked my head through into the eerily empty hallway. Beside me, I could hear the giddy voice of Jeremiah say, Mr. Scraggly, we've come to play. So, Jeremiah, where to next? I don't know. I never got further than the basement, said Jeremiah, looking down the hall in childish awe. Of course you haven't, said Emma, rolling her eyes. Some guide you turned out to be. Oh, come on, guys, said Jeremiah. Where's your sense of adventure? Pretty sure I left mine in the car, but I've been wrong before, said Claire. Daniel had a light shined at the massive hole in the ceiling above that revealed the next floor hallway. "I think my sense of self-preservation is stronger," Daniel said. Fighting the urge to sneeze, I said, "I'm actually with Jeremiah on this one. Let's just walk around and see what there is to see." Jeremiah's eyes lit up. "See, I'm glad at least one of you is having fun." Jeremiah turned to his sister. "What about you, Emma?" "I'm just here for the ride," Emma said with her arms crossed. "Perfect. Majority rules. Now, gang, who wants to split up and search for clues?" Jeremiah pointed his light in our direction. It revealed the previously unnoticed load of dust falling from the ceiling above. Something was moving on the next floor. We all looked above. "Oh, great," said Claire. "Now Daniel needs to worry about getting mauled by a raccoon, too." Claire and Daniel were led by Jeremiah through the rooms opposite Emma and I. It's one of those situations that in hindsight, Jeremiah was orchestrating to get Emma and I alone together over the years. As much of a pain as he could be, he was just as much a brother to me as he was to Emma. "Look at all this," I said. There were beds lined along the walls of the room facing inward and packed tightly against it. Thin wooden structural posts were in front of every other bed from floor to ceiling, keeping more in line with the prison aesthetic. It wasn't cozy to say the least. From the looks of things, even before this place got run down, comfort was not top priority for the residents. Still, that didn't stop Emma from joking. She nudged me with her elbow to get my attention, and with a wink she said, "Which bed are we taking?" My eyes widened, and I smiled. "How about that one?" The frame showed signs of wood rot from exposure to moisture, and some of the ceiling had collapsed on top of it. "Nothing gets me in the mood more than termites," she said, laughing. "I hope Mr. Scraggly likes your sarcasm as much as I do." She turned her body to mine, grabbed my arms, and leaned in. Her pale blue eyes reflected the light of our flashlights like the sea, causing my entire being to melt. But before I could lean in to meet her lips, Daniel's voice came from just outside the room and stabbed me like a dagger. "Hey guys, come check this out!" We both looked at each other before she rolled her eyes. "Better go see what the fuss is about." Emma probably saw the disappointment in my eyes, so before she started to walk away, she gave me a quick peck on the cheek. With that one moment, the whole night was worth it. She then whispered one breathtaking word in my ear. "Later." My mind was ecstatic and my heart fluttered like a puppy when its owner got home from work. As I watched her walk out of the room, I thought that nothing could ruin this night. "All right, what did you guys find?" asked Emma. When we centered the room where Daniel's voice came from, we saw him, Claire, and Jeremiah all circling around something against the wall. They were looking at an old photograph hung at eye level showing the students and staff of the school. It also showed two massive slash marks across the center of the picture carrying down deep enough that they gashed into the wall. Jeremiah turned to Emma and I, grinning ear to ear. "Danny boy, we found our first sign of Mr. Scraggly." "Oh, come on," said Claire. "Surely you don't actually believe Mr. Scraggly is real. An animal probably just scratched the picture or something." Daniel's eyes were still fixed on the gashes. "Mr. Scraggly or not, I don't think I want to see whatever can make a scratch that deep." "Come on," said Jeremiah. "Don't be a Jeremiah's insult was cut off by the sound of heavy footsteps pounding quickly across the floor above us. And with that, we all changed our attitudes to match Daniel's. No words were spoken, but like a hive mind, we all started walking quickly to the door, realizing it was time to leave. Daniel regrettably had managed to speed walk to the front of the pack. As we made it down the hall, we all stopped in shock as a long taloned limb reached down from a hole in the ceiling above. It grabbed Daniel by his head, Each of the 4 piercing claws had dug into Daniel's skull with enough grip strength to lift him from the ground, causing agonizing screams and gurgles to come from our friend.
"Daniel!"
shouted Claire. I looked around at the others. Claire's mouth was wide. Emma was frozen stiff. Jeremiah was backing away, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to shout, but nothing came out. Eventually, I managed to spew out the word, "run." It sounded more like a grunt than anything. I swallowed my spit and summoned all of my might from the bottom of my gut.
"Run!"
I shouted as I turned my body and started to bolt. Jeremiah and Emma started sprinting down toward the end of the hall, but Claire was still fixed on Daniel. I grabbed her arm and started sprinting so hard I thought I'd pull her arm out of its socket. Behind the 2 of us, I heard a loud thump which caused me to briefly turn to see the body of Daniel after it had been dropped to the floor, with neither a sign of what grabbed him or a sign of Daniel's head.
"Is everyone okay?"
I asked as quietly as I could. The now 4 of us were all bent over, panting and out of breath.
"I'm good,"
said Emma. Jeremiah just nodded his head. Claire was leaning against a wall, catching her breath and staring off into space.
"Claire!"
Emma said sternly. Claire left her daze and looked at Emma with shattered eyes.
"Daniel!"
"We know," I said. It wasn't exactly the best or most sympathetic response, but what else was there to say? I stood up tall and looked away from Claire.
"Jeremiah, are there any other ways out of here? Preferably a way that doesn't involve us jumping off the top floor?"
Jeremiah placed one hand on his hip while he thought before rubbing the other through his hair.
"Yeah, there should be a fire escape on the 2nd floor."
"Should be?" I asked.
"There's a fire escape on the 2nd floor. It was added when part of the building was converted to a public elementary school."
Emma spoke out.
"That sounds great and all, but the 2nd floor is where whatever grabbed Daniel was."
Emma was right, but our options were to go there or head back over Daniel's body, hoping that whatever grabbed him was gone. I looked at her.
"In case you haven't realized, Emma, we don't have a lot of options."
Emma seemed almost startled by my tone. I know I came off as short. Actually, I sounded like a panicked prick. But I felt an executive decision needed to be made. Emma glared at me at first, but she understood.
"All right, let's find some stairs."
After a moment of silence, she looked at me with heavy eyes.
"I hope you're making the right choice."
I nodded. And after I took a heavy breath and a gulp, I uttered words that I'd soon come to regret.
"I'll go first."
It took all the strength I had left to prevent myself from collapsing from just speaking those words. But thankfully, Emma put her hand on my sleeve, which gave me the little push I needed to go forward. Whether going up the stairs was the right choice or not, I sometimes wonder how things could have been different if I had let someone else take the lead. The 4 of us quietly crept through the hall to the staircase. Well, as quiet as the building would allow a bunch of panicked teenagers to move. The decision was made that our lights would stay off so that they wouldn't bring any unwanted attention to ourselves. It was a good idea in theory, but in practice, it fell short to say the least. The floor was scattered with debris and old furniture that we kept stumbling over. And if that wasn't enough, there was a hole straight to the roof that caused the warping and rotting of the floorboards from all the overhead rains over the years. We were loud and unable to keep our footing, and in short, we all knew this building would be our tomb.
Here's the stairs."
Jeremiah's voice was still broken after witnessing what happened to Daniel. But at the same time, he almost sounded relieved. It's crazy how progress, no matter how small, can move anyone and get them to hope. Still, even with the little hope Jeremiah was displaying, It was hard seeing him acting so differently than he did before our world became a nightmare.
Any idea where the fire escape would be?
Asked Emma.
It should be in the center of the hall, on the back side of the building.
Jeremiah's words unintentionally had an edge that made it more noticeable as he spoke. It was crystal clear none of us wanted to walk deeper into this forsaken hell.
It could be worse,
I said, trying to be reassuring. No one gave a reply. Like what I thought I saw with Jeremiah, I couldn't push through the fear, but was trying to hold the mindset that things were looking up because at least we didn't have to walk to the complete opposite side of the building. In the minds of the others, though, being in the building at all was still soul-crushing. I started up the steps while Emma's hand was gripped to my shirt sleeve like we were glued together. Once we made it to the top step, I peeked my head up just enough to make sure that our good friend Mr. Scraggly wasn't walking the halls in front of us. And as far as I could tell, he wasn't. Just an empty hallway. It was just as dirty, but significantly less cluttered than what we had to deal with on the first floor. It also had the added bonus of moonlight gleaming through the windows, illuminating our steps, which was a welcome change.
All clear,
I said, leading the way. The four of us all moved single file down the hall until we reached the corner where we'd need to turn right. Once again, I peeked my head through to the moonlit floor to see nothing. And that's when I learned that the story of Mr. Scraggly was wrong. Mr. Scraggly doesn't just walk the halls. Sometimes, he climbs the walls. Or in this case, the ceiling. There was a noise close by, which caused all of us to instinctively look. We were nothing more than prey, and we knew it. And we were about to come face to face with what was preying on us. I started to make the corner with Emma and Claire, following close behind. I couldn't see the source of the sound, but I could tell it was directly in front of us, moving closer and closer. My eyes darted all around, trying to find its source before a drip of water hit my shoulder. It caused me to look up to see a pair of yellow eyes piercing through the darkness above.
Everyone move!
Too late. Jeremiah was last in the pack, and Mr. Scraggly pounced on him at the exact moment he looked up. My friend's screams were nerve-wracking. I still feel the same sharp sensation in my body when I think about it. Mr. Scraggly tore into Jeremiah like a wrapped present. Clothes flew with blood and flesh until the scream stopped, which thankfully was quick. The mutilation, however, didn't stop. Claire, Emma, and I were backing away down the hall, not able to take our eyes off the thing known as Mr. Scraggly. The disgusting, scraggly mass with spindly limbs making short work of whoever it finds. But what the stories don't tell you is the ferocity in which its talons lacerate through flesh. Nor do they tell you about the bird-like yellow eyes and the unnerving bloodied smile that it gives you when it lets you walk away. I grabbed Claire by the shirt and Emma by the arm in an effort to break them away from the sight. Emma never screamed for Jeremiah. She didn't even resist when I started to drag her away. It was as if her very soul left her body. I'm both sorry to say and incredibly thankful that the rest of what happened that night was a blur. What I can tell you is that we ran and ran and ran some more. Eventually, we found the fire escape. A rickety old ladder haphazardly janked onto the side of the building. The three of us made it down to see police lights behind the fence. We later learned that Daniel's parents called the police to report him missing when they realized that we didn't actually go to a concert. And for once, I'm thankful they were so nosy. The three of us ran to the lights and we were surprisingly greeted with handcuffs. Not that any of us complained. The cold steel felt like a warm embrace compared to what every step through the school felt like. The police took us to the station and questioned us as criminals. I suppose we were trespassing after all. The thing is that they never mentioned that. never charged us and never followed up after that night. They just kept asking what we saw while we were in the school and what happened to our friends, like they didn't already know. Come to find out, they never went back in to recover the bodies, and the news just said that a group of local kids went missing in the woods on a camping trip. The absolute load of bull that ended up being passed off as the official story is what led us to suspect that the police know what really happened. They were just covering it up. After doing some digging on disappearances through Oklahoma, I certainly wouldn't put it past them. And when you take into account all the stories, I doubt we were anywhere near the first. After that night, Claire became distant. I don't know anyone to hardly ever hear from her again in the following months after our high school graduation. That is until a few months later when the news spread that Claire took her own life. Maybe it was the grief, a misguided sense of survivor's guilt, the pain of no one taking her story seriously, or simply that what we saw that night was too much for her to carry on in life with that memory. One night that summer, Claire went to one of the local street pharmacists for some pills and took them all in one sitting. She left no note, no goodbyes, nothing but a memory. Emma and I, we just drifted apart and grew distant. It's not that we didn't try to keep things the way that they were. It's just that after that night, things were different between us. We were still friendly on the off chance that we saw each other. We even set aside time on the occasion to meet. We'll go out to play catch up, have a drink, and make believe our normality, but it's still not like how it used to be. We're working on it though. We're really the only friends we each have, and we try not to take that for granted. It's been a long 6 years, but as for me, I'm not doing too badly. Sure, I'm occasionally ready to bite the bullet myself, but as long as Emma is around, I keep trying to have hope. And that's why I'm telling you this. It goes without saying that we went through a lot and all it took was one bad night. So whether you take this seriously or not, just remember, if you ever decide that you want to explore the old Jackson boarding school, or any location with an old urban legend for that matter, think twice. Because if you don't, who knows what could happen. Unless you're lucky, Mr. Scraggly will surely find you. Or at least, that's how the story goes.